So I really love the look of this new Nami costume, and I pretty much had everything already in my stash to make it, so I said, fuck it, we're gonna do it. So here's the sew along. As always, if you have questions, feel free to ask. Starting with this skirt, here is the general shape I made. It was a little complicated. It's essentially a circle within a circle to get the high-low effect. The middle circle is twice the circumference of my waist because I wanted to gather it to give it all those nice cute pleats. I can't give you the exact measurements because it'll vary by person, but I hope this general shape helps. After cutting out the actual fabric, I went ahead and gathered the waist section in, and then I just kind of left it for now. We're at part 2 of the Nami sew along, and I'm starting on the waistband, as you can see here, the 2 pieces. And then I've made the belt loops, and it was a pain in the ass. I like to add the seam in the back so that you didn't see it. And she has like a million belt loops on the back of this, but I'm just gonna put 6 because it's stupid. So I've cut those down to size and sewed them on. So this is the final product of all the belt loops. And now I'm going to add the lining piece to the waistband, just on the top part, leaving the bottom open. I just freehand drafted the garter, and then I'm going to cut that out and sew that all on. I actually really didn't like the matching fabric for the garter piece, so I ended up changing that. So yeehaw, part 3. We're at part 3 of the Nami build, and I'm currently gathering the skirt to fit the waistband, and there's a lot to gather there. So I'm just doing it to the front facing part and then sewing that on, which leaves the back piece to kind of be folded over like shown, and then we can just top stitch it on the front so it's like a stitch in the ditch kind of thing. Next, I'm going to open up this back seam so I can put in the elastic piece and then just stitch it closed with just a simple ladder stitch. And then to hem everything, I'm adding in a 1-inch horsehair braid to the entire hem length. Once the skirt's actually hemmed, I can cut these down to size where I can put this little like claspy guy for the garters. And there we have it. The skirt is mostly done for now. The next part of the Nami build I'm doing is the belt. So I'm going to start off with some basic craft foam. I didn't have anything long enough, so I have 3 pieces here that I just sewed together with the zigzag stitch. And I'm going to use contact cement and vinyl and attach it all together. Once this is all dry, I punched a hole to attach the buckle, and you can sew this on, but I had these little rivets that I'm going to put on instead. I then start using a hole punch. I know it's not big enough, but it helps mark them. And then I'm going to use these large grommets and place them all. For the end piece, you can either round it, but my buckle came with this little end piece, so I just glued that on. So here is the finished belt, and then everything I have so far. I'm going to make some adjustments, I think, but overall I think it's looking pretty solid so far. Cool. So I stared at this for a while, and something just felt really off, and I really contemplated what it was. And I realized it was the garter straps. The contrast was just too much. So I went ahead and hand stitched these little guys on, and I think that really brought the whole piece together. I know us creatives can often be a little too self-critical, but I think there is something to be said about kind of taking a step back if you're not happy about certain things and kind of reevaluating. So I guess don't be afraid to kind of edit your work when you need to. You don't need to be crazy hard on yourself, but everybody makes mistakes about things, and just kind of follow your gut feeling. And remember that this is your costume, nobody else's, so do what makes you happy. So I started making Nami's top, and then I stopped because I hated everything. So I'm restarting Nami's top. I was originally going to make it with a lot of structure, and then I was like, fuck it. So we're just going to make this a really basic top. I used a top I already had to help me kind of pattern out a new pattern, I guess. Sure. And once I had the basic shape, I went ahead and sewed the top part. I'm adding an elastic here to the underneath just to make sure that everything kind of stays in place, and I didn't want to top stitch anything because see, it looks so nice when it's not top stitched. You can also see I don't have Nami titties, so this is going to be a little different than the reference. So now I'm just working on the choker. I used some leftover fabric from the skirt, and I'm just gonna make some hook and eyes so I can attach to the top. And I attached with some rings, and it's pretty much done. It was pretty simple once I stopped complaining about everything I made. So I'm making this hat video after the costume is done because I was in a huge rush to finish. I started off with a felt hat base. It was extra large, and then I cut it down to the size and shape that I wanted. I used heat transfer vinyl for this stripe, but I hated it and redid it later with heat and bond, which is what I used for the little pink circle here. The new white fabric was neoprene. I think it looks a lot nicer. And to not show any weird edging, I added this kind of mock bias tape. As you can see, the back is not 100%. And then I went and sewed up the sides to keep its shape. And then the boa feather was just kind of overlapped, and I have those snaps on the back to keep everything in place. Same with the feathers, which were pink, and I dip dyed black. And these are just curtain rod, the hoop thingies that I used for this that came in gold from Amazon. And because the boa was so heavy, I actually had to add weights to the other side of the hat to maintain it being straight. So as you can see, Nami's got a big ass hat. So you may be wondering, Steph, how do you pack such a big hat with all these little extra fragile dealy bobs? And the answer to that is, you don't. Because a lot of these pieces are fragile, I actually have snaps on them. So now I can pack all of these little extra pieces separately in ways where they won't get damaged. And I can just squish this hat flat in a suitcase.